All right, welcome in everyone. You're listening to Bulls Central, and I'm joined with me today by another special guest. You know him for his long time work covering the Bulls, dating all the way back to the pre-Michael Jordan days. Best-selling author, longtime writer for the Chicago Tribune, and now covering the Bulls for Bulls.com. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show Sam Smith of Bulls.com. Sam, appreciate you making the time, and it's good to have you back on.
Sure, good to see you, and being living in Chicago, good to see the sun over your shoulder. And we don't see it
Yes,
much.
yes, it's been nice. I can use a little bit of rain here, but yeah, it's been good. Now, if you're not already, be sure to follow Sam at Sam Smith Hoops on Twitter. Check out his great work on Bulls.com. Sam, it's been kind of a wild season for the Bulls, an up and down year, but for the most part, they've kind of fallen below expectations. They had these moments where it looks like they're starting to figure things out and turning the season around. Then they lose to some of these really bad teams, some of the worst teams in the league, but then they go on to beat some of the best teams in the league. This is the opposite of last season where the Bulls seemed like they couldn't beat any of the good teams, right? And they beat the teams they were supposed to beat. How do you explain this to all of these Bulls fans who seem just sort of befuddled by what's going on this season? And how do you make sense of it?
I think that's because if you're a Bulls fan, you probably mostly watch the Bulls, and you're not watching a lot of the rest of the NBA. And frankly, I
Yeah.
see this all over the league. I mean, if I watch a lot of the league. If you watch a Western Conference game, almost every game, everybody who's playing each other is within a couple of games of 500.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't want to declare sort of the end of it, but I think it kind of is the end of the sort of super team era. This LeBron's group they put together in 2010, and that became sort of, because they had success, it kind of became the model at, Kawhi and Paul George, which has kind of been a failure, because those guys don't want to play. Harden, the Brooklyn disaster fiasco that just sort of been broken up now, Kyrie to Dallas. And so and what you saw on top of that is Bradley Beal doesn't want to go into free agency, wants the money. Damian Lillard, and I know we celebrate him, but he wanted the money. I think these guys looked around and said, there's no guarantees that, and frankly, there's not much chance that you're going to, strike lightning and be able to, do what LeBron and Wade and Bosh did, and get to the finals 4 years in a row, get 2 titles, and sort of become a little mini dynasty. Golden State, like everyone says, did it sort of organically, and that's sort of coming to an end now. So I think what we're seeing, around the league is kind of this parity where, you've got an awful lot of teams at a similar level. So beating a quote good team is not as significant as losing to a bad team, because a lot of the bad teams, and in the Bulls' particular case, the quote good teams tend to be more veteran teams that play a little slower, and don't have younger players, and that kind of fits the model with the Bulls, who play a little slower, especially without Lonzo Ball this season, and have veteran sort of half court players. Where they've had trouble against some of the teams are these athletic younger teams that shoot a lot of threes and run up and down the court and dunk a lot, which they have trouble matching. So you say, well, how did they lose to Oklahoma City? Or some of the teams like that. They lost to the Spurs earlier on. Houston, they lost again. These are teams that have a lot of young players who are very athletic. They don't match up well with that. And if those guys happen to be making threes, which is that's all they do is shoot threes, and we're talking about it with Popovich in Chicago when the Spurs were here the other night, and he feels like a lot of us, those of us who've been around the NBA a long time, we don't like the way the game's played now.
Yeah.
And Popovich, anything he pointed out, something, which a lot of us see, you can dominate the box score. You can win rebounding. You could win assists. You can get more steals, cause more turnovers, get more block shots. But if the other team is making threes on you, you've lost the game.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when you look at a box score now, you just check who made more threes, and that usually win the game. And Bulls are not they've got sort of a flaw in that they're a half-court team without good shooting. And if you're going to play half-court, and to the coach's credit, he's been trying to speed it up. He wants to play faster. They just don't have a point guard to do that. So they end up playing half court a lot with DeRozan, Lavine, and they don't have shooters to play off them. And so as a result, when they run into teams that shoot threes and happen to hit them, they'll have trouble. And like Boston, is not that they shoot a lot of threes, but when they played the Bulls, they missed them. As I remember that both of those games, Jaylen Brown, he's one of these guys that just continues to shoot them. He'll miss 10 in a row. Yeah. And, the notion was we'd always play, well, if you're not hitting your three, try something else. They don't do that. A lot of these teams just keep shooting the ball. Yeah. So you see 40 or 50 threes thrown up. And so I think that's why we've seen some of these where people say, well, it's a bad team, we should beat them. That's a good team. We're better, because it's a lot more parity than it has been.
So parity is an aspect of it as well. So are you saying, for you anyway, not really much of a surprise based on what we've seen from the Bulls thus far, given, like you said, the parity in the league, the fact that the Bulls don't really have a ton of shooting, specifically three-point shooting. Are you not really surprised by the way the Bulls have shown up so far this season?
No, I'm really not. I mean, I probably picked them a little higher. I picked them sixth, preseason. Did you see how many predictions on the Bulls this season, preseason, did you see above 42 or 43 wins and above sixth place?
Yeah,
I didn't see any.
Not a lot, actually. In fact, a lot lower than that. I mean, they had some projecting.
This notion of they're these tremendous underachievers. I don't see that. They're right around 500 now, and they came off last season, and Billy Donovan said himself after last season, and he's reiterated a couple of times this year, DeMar DeRozan had one of the best 6 weeks in NBA history as far as shooting the ball. Yeah. Made last shot after last shot, incredible game-winning shots, stole wins. And Donovan said at the end of last season, he said, well, just take off those couple of games again at the end of the New Year's, where Indiana and Washington back-to-back, when the games were over, the Bulls lost. He made threes to win the game, both of them. You flip those games the other way, and they're in the play-in.
They're playing, yeah.
And then, they went in the playoffs, and they had, they had the worst playoff series I've ever seen a team have.
Yeah, that was bad.
They went home after splitting in Milwaukee and were out of both games by halftime, down 30 points.
Yeah, non-competitive in those games, yeah.
Right. So what exactly were you expecting? They didn't do anything. They said, we're going to go with continuity. They added a couple of fringe guys who, had done well. I like the additions. But I didn't see where you say, well, we won 46 games last year. Now we're in position to win 52. I didn't see anyone thinking that.
Well, and that, I guess that kind of begs the question of, what Arturas Karnisovas said prior to the season, right before training camp. Everyone's been talking about it, how his expectation was that the team was going to be better. But I think a lot of people were like, well, how are they going to actually be better, given the fact that there weren't really a ton of upgrades that were made over the offseason? Kind of leads me into my next point as far as the trade deadline goes. For those watching,
let me interrupt that, and then we'll do the trade deadline, because I understood what he was saying. They fully expected Lonzo Ball to be back.
Yeah,
and then what they said is, look, when he got hurt, we were 29-13, whatever it was. Yep. They were tied for first or second. Billy Donovan missed coaching the All-Star game by one game last Sunday of last season, right before the coach, Miami won that last game on a Sunday. If Miami had lost that last game, he would have been and the Bulls staff would have been coach of the All-Star game, which meant, 50 games into the season, they'd been in first place.
Yeah.
So his point is, we're going to get Lonzo back, which they believed. Obviously, it's not happening now, but so that's what he was saying, in effect. We don't have to make a change. We just get this guy back. We were in first place when we left. I'm not guaranteed we'll win a title, but I think we could go farther than we did if we get him back and have him for a full season. And they thought he would be. And at the very least, I think they thought he would be by December, November, maybe Thanksgiving. I remember at Media Day, they were talking Thanksgiving, maybe into December. So that's where they were coming from.
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of called it actually. I had you on shortly after training camp, and I had asked you because you point blank asked Alonzo when, he was talking to the media, is there a possibility that you could be missing the whole season, that you could miss the whole season? And obviously, he said at that time it was the worst case scenario. And I remember when I had you on, I asked you, I was like, do you think that Lonzo is going to be coming back this season? And you said, I would be shocked if he did. And I was shocked that you said that, but now here we are. We're, already in February and there's no sign of him returning at all this season. So I think, yeah, it says a
Yeah,
lot.
I
It speaks
kind
a
of,
lot to you. Yeah.
I kind of feel badly being prescient about that, but the signs were really bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've witnessed, Derrick Rose saw a lot of these things go on, and I saw the optimism that accompanies it. But when you're close to the players and you see what they're going through, this is a really long process. People expect, because these guys are the great, and they are the great athletes, that are just going to come back. But when you have multiple surgeries like he had, and we're talking about the symptoms he had, I was like, whoa, that sounds really bad.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't hoping for it, but I was thinking, this might not go as well as they hope. And
Yeah.
and I understand the team is, they want to be optimistic, hopeful. They want to be encouraging to the player. And I was just sort of saying, well, let's not count on him as much until we actually see him.
Yeah. So let's talk about the trade deadline. Now, for those watching, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon before the Bulls game against the Grizzlies. So a lot can change from now when I upload this, most likely tomorrow morning. I've got my notifications turned on just in case anything happens. But Sam, we've got less than 48 hours now until the trade deadline. Most reports are indicating the Bulls front office is going to remain relatively quiet at the deadline, much probably to the disappointment of a lot of Bulls fans. What's the latest you're hearing on your end as a Bulls insider? Do you think we can expect any major shakeups or no?
Well, we didn't expect the Vucevic trade when it occurred. We were
Sure.
coming right up to the trading deadline 2 years ago, and they said, well, they really are not going anywhere. So yeah, things change, opportunities come. But I think it follows up what I just said. They still believe, and they're hopeful of getting Lonzo back.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know this, but my sense is their philosophy has been, look, we have yet to get a full season with the group we put together. DeRozan, Lavine, Vučević, Ball. That was the summer of 2021. And we saw it for a half season last year. It looked good. We were in first place. We haven't seen it at all this year. DeRozan has another year on his deal left. Lavine, was extended. Obviously, Vucevic is a free agent, and that's obviously things can change. He's unrestricted, but we want to take one. We want to take a shot. They haven't said that, and if something presented itself, they say, "Well, Kevin Durant said, my life isn't complete unless I spend another winter in Chicago." So some extraordinary stuff can happen, but it's not likely to. And based on their philosophy and everything they said, it kind of makes sense that they're going to try to write it. Try to get Lonzo back next September. For next season, bring all those guys back and try to run it one full time and see if their initial plan is what they expected, that this team can compete and be, potentially a conference finalist team. Then once you're in the conference finals, anything can happen, kind of thing. With a full season under our belt. So based on that, I don't expect anything. Maybe things are on the edges. Drummond's played well lately, but he hadn't been playing well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that might have been his play lately might have impressed some teams to pay more than they would have 2 weeks ago. Coby White, they have to pay a couple of guys. They don't have to, but Coby could become he's restricted. They could give him a qualifying offer and make him unrestricted. Dosunmu is on the 2-year deal as a second round pick. Probably have to pay him. I have a couple of guys potentially to pay plus Vucevic. So yeah, they could do something like that. But more with a role player than one of the starters.
Well, let me ask you this about Lonzo. Assuming, he is going to eventually come back, but is he going to be the same player? And I think maybe a lot of Bulls fans are just scarred because of what happened with Derrick Rose. A little bit different, right? Because their games are obviously significantly different when you talk about Derrick Rose's athleticism and that him tearing his ACL and then having subsequent injuries that obviously impacted his ability to be the same player. But can Lonzo be the same player after being out for, by the time he does come back, it's going to be close to 18 months.
Yeah. Who knows? You don't know, but it's sort of the same philosophy of let's see if we can get him back and what he is. I think the notion is now, if say, he improves to the point by the end of the regular season that he can start full workouts and he has a full summer workouts, maybe they could get him back to a level. I think the notion would be, they would put him on some sort of a load management kind of schedule, like no back-to-backs and, kind of like Kawhi Leonard plays on kind of thing. But, the Clippers are, even with Leonard playing 50 games, George, the same thing. Some others are around the league do that, that if you could get him, but have him there all season and then sort of supplement that because you'll have an opportunity to do some things in the off season too, maybe fix some shooting, add a shooter, get a backup point guard. You got short-term deals on a couple of guys, Dragic, Drummond, whatever, Green, Derek Jones. And so there's flexibility there. So, management is, I think they've been creative in the things they've done, especially when they came in. So I think they have the capability to do it. And, if he's physically healthy, I think he'll look. That's the other thing too. I know there's been a lot of Lonzo, come save us. It's a guy. He's never been an all-star. This is not LeBron or Derrick. This is not Derrick Rose returning to the Bulls, the league MVP. This is a guy who is a nice, really good player that fits into what they needed. Plays fast, shoots threes. But there was a reason they could get him. That wasn't good going to the basket, didn't get to the free throw line a lot. Not a classic point guard. So, a really nice fourth or fifth starter, you bring him back. You're not bringing back Derrick Rose, the focus of your team. So I think based on that, the expectation should be a lot less, even though it gets built up because he's been gone.
Right. Yeah, I did want to talk about a few players, which you kind of alluded to just a little bit ago, as it relates to the trade deadline anyway, and also the upcoming offseason. One being Nikola Vučević. So obviously Vuč is on an expiring contract. He'll be an unrestricted free agent this summer. Is that a decent season? Better than last year anyway, but probably not to the level of play that maybe some fans have wanted to see from him, considering, you traded 2 first-round picks, Wendell Carter Jr. to get him. And at that time, he was an all-star, but he's still a very productive player. Still one of the better bigs in the NBA that can get you double on a nightly basis. What do you think the future holds for Vučević? The last thing you want to happen is to lose him for nothing and let him walk as a free agent this summer. Is there a scenario where the Bulls look to move him in the next 48 hours if they sense that he isn't looking to re-sign, or do you see it more likely that the Bulls are going to extend him on a shorter-term deal?
That's the risk. Guy becomes a free agent. He earns the right to be a free agent. And, he has that option. I wouldn't, to me, that's the other thing too. I don't think the Bulls believe they're out of it now. Like some fans and media believe that, we lost to Houston, we're done. Whatever one of those losses are, it's over, the season's over, blow it up. Charles Barkley on TV, blow it up, they're done. They don't believe that. They feel that this group, you're still dealing with all-star level talent, and good role players, and that you could get in the playoffs and do something. Whether they can or not, we'll see. But they believe that. So they're not going to take pennies on the dollar for Vučević, as a rental. Team is not going to give you anything substantial for a guy, especially a center in this NBA, even though, I think he's been very productive. And if you look at the numbers in the last 2 or 3 weeks, he had a 43-point game. And since then, I think he's averaging, comparable to what he did in Orlando. He's averaging like 23 and 14 in the last 10 or 11 games. So and he's, it hasn't been always the smartest team. They don't find him on switches very well. There's a lot of isolation play, but they have been better at that. And so as a result, he's been profiting off that lately, where DeRozan has been giving up the ball more, Zach's been giving up the ball more, and they've been looking for him more, and he's been productive. Gets in the lane, has a lot of mismatches, takes advantage of all these teams playing small centers. He outplays a lot of these teams. That's another reason they beat Boston, because he really badly outplayed Al Horford in those games.
Yeah.
So, I don't expect them to panic and and that would be a panic kind of move. We've got to trade Vucevic, or we'll look bad because we gave up 2 first-round picks. Look, the Magic still are pretty far from the playoffs. I know I hear all this stuff about, great deal. Magic made the deal of the century, got the Vucevic deal. I don't know. I don't see him in the playoffs. I don't see him as a contender for the next several years.
I'm like you.
They could get the number 1 or 2 pick and end up with Wembanyama, who's not going to be an all-star next year. I guarantee you that. Or Scoot Henderson, and for all the guards they got, they still need a point guard, and now they're using Fultz. I noticed, but that team is still a team several years away. They got some good players, and I don't diminish what they got from the deal, but Vucevic is still a highly productive guy, and so I think it's going to depend. They're not going to do anything. What I believe, I think it's going to depend on what they do in the playoffs, which is what happens with most teams. You get in the playoffs, you think, hey, we can go 2-3 rounds. If you end up, losing in 5 or 6, you start making changes. If you end up getting to the conference finals, hey, we're on the way.
Yeah, I'm like you. I actually, when I hear people talk about how the Bulls got fleeced, by the Magic on that trade, and that, Wendell Carter Jr. is already better than Vucevic, which I think is personally preposterous. I like Wendell. I think he's great, and obviously he's younger than Vucevic, but I really don't think you compare his level of productivity next to Vuce, especially on a really bad team. And the Bulls got what they wanted, right? I mean, in order for them to make Zach happy, to be able to retain him, to be able to actually entice a player like DeMar DeRozan, even though, they offered him a lot of money, I think you kind of have to make that type of move. And Orlando did what they needed to do in order to rebuild. So I agree. I don't really like the notion that the Bulls, got destroyed by that trade. I mean, if they want to talk about Rudy Gobert to the Timberwolves, that might be a different story. But somewhat.
I agree. What they did more than anything, and I felt they had to do it. Was I've been here and seen through this rebuilding, which was the right thing to do at the time. They just never got lucky. They should have gotten Luka. They should have gotten John Morant. They should, they had better odds than all those teams in the lottery each year. Zion. Every team jumped them each time. So they got, that's what rebuilding, blow it up is about, which people don't realize or don't like to deal with. It's about luck. It's not a strategy.
Yeah.
It's about luck and a gamble, right? And you got to get, you got 14% odds on that number 1 pick. So, what would be different thinking about the Bulls now if they had John Morant or if they had Luka Doncic? Both guys, or even Trae Young, all guys that they had better odds of getting. So, anyway, the community had gotten very disappointed at what occurred. And it's tough in a bigger market, especially in a place like Chicago that has had a lot of success. And what they did is they bought relevancy. And that's what the community needs. The Bulls are back to number 1 in ticket sales in the NBA. And the team is relevant. They may not be as good as a lot of people hoped or would like to see, but they're relevant again. And they were irrelevant with, and no offense to Wendell, but when he just because somebody does something well doesn't mean they're going to do it everywhere well. And for whatever was going on, Wendell was having a very difficult time mentally in Chicago.
Yeah,
he was unraveling, and it was not going to get better. And he needed a change of scenery. He needed to be in a market also where there wasn't pressure every day, like a big market. Orlando doesn't have any media. Nobody comes up to him and says, why'd you only get 6 and 4 today? If you get 6 and 4, nobody even notices. They don't talk to him. And some players need that, and he needed that. And good for him. He's just a wonderful, wonderful young man. Really likable, sensitive. But he needed to be in a place where there wasn't as much pressure on him. So it's good for him. But Vucevic, was good for Chicago because he helped bring relevancy back to basketball.
Somewhat related to Vucevic, Andre Drummond was another guy I wanted to talk about. You had asked him after the game last night against the Spurs, the tandem between him and Vuce. Drummond had arguably one of the best games of his season, putting up 21 and 15, was out of the rotation for a while. He's now inserted back in. I've always been in the mindset that doesn't make sense to have Drummond out of the rotation when you're limited as a team when it comes to size and rebounding. What were your thoughts on Billy taking him out of the rotation? And then I guess two-part question. He's really been the name you hear about most in trade rumors for the Bulls. What's the latest you're hearing around the rumor mill for Drummond potentially getting traded, especially after the game he had last night?
Well, I think it's probably spiked up. Like I mentioned before, it's been interesting. I don't know if that was a showcase because all of a sudden, the last 3 games he started playing. And the interesting part, we've been asking Billy all season about this, because he hasn't been playing them, but it's an interesting, ambivalence that the coach has, Donovan. He wants to play like most teams in the NBA play. He wants to play small. You can see he likes to play small. He loved having Javonte Green in there. And I think actually when I talked to you earlier, I thought that Javonte Green was starting the season. Eventually he did get in there as starter, and then he got hurt. And then Patrick Williams went back in. But at the time when Donovan did it, like a month into the season, said this is going to be long lasting. Patrick's not going back in there for a while. And then it turned out, Green got hurt. He went back in. Williams did fine. And, now he's back in and he'll be in. There's not going to be a change again.
Yeah.
But you can see with the players he plays, he likes playing Giovanni Green. He likes playing Derek Jones. He wants to speed up the game. He's a Rick Pitino disciple. And Rick Pitino basketball is pressure, speed, pace, switching, shooting, all those things that sort of the modern NBA game. Billy, he wants to play that way. He doesn't fully have the personnel to play that way, but he's trying, especially because Lonzo's not there. Right. And then, Alex Caruso, of course, gets hurt all the time, because he, throws himself all over the place, so he doesn't have all the guys he wants. So he's inserting some of the kind of guys that he wants to do that. And so you can see, the sort of ambivalence because Drummond will come in and he'll just brutalize guys, offensive rebounds, because it's not an offensive rebounding team. It's a team, like a lot of NBA teams worry about getting back, stopping transition so they don't hit the offensive boards. And Drummond not running fast anyway. He's all over the offensive boards, wants to, follows. And so he's been very productive. He's been terrific these last 3 games. But the previous, I think, 8 games, he sat out 5, didn't play at all.
Yeah.
So, you could see that it's an interesting dilemma for Donovan because he's getting a lot of production out of him, but every time he's asked about it, he keeps saying, "Well, I'm not giving up on Derek Jones analytically." So anyway, I don't know if that means he'll be traded, but I think it's if it was a showcase and some team says now we'll give you a first, kind of it might be the Godfather thing, might be kind of deal we can't refuse.
Yeah, I mean, there's.
So I think that's possible.
Yeah, like you said, every player has a price. Like even with Alex Caruso, Bulls fans love Alex Caruso. I love Alex Caruso. I guess there was rumors around the Bulls asking price being 2 first-round picks. Well, if you can get 2 first-round picks for Caruso, then yeah, you do it. You know what I mean? Like every player has a price.
You're a 500 team that nobody thinks is going to win a title. Everybody's available.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Everybody.
Yeah.
So if it comes in for DeRozan, Lavine, that they're available too. I don't think anything's going to happen, but I'm saying,
nobody's untouchable.
Got LeBron or Jordan, and nobody's untouchable on a 500 team.
Yeah, for sure. The other guy that I wanted to talk about real quick, because I know Bulls are going to be starting here pretty soon. You probably want to get to covering the team, but the other guy I wanted to talk about, Coby White, also an expiring contract to his rookie deal. Like you mentioned, he'll be a restricted free agent this summer. Coby has actually shown a lot of signs of improvement in terms of his overall defense. His decision-making on the court has gotten better, but still pretty inconsistent player. And obviously in a crowded backcourt for which the Bulls, have, it's really hard to envision how he fits with this team for the future, again, especially if Lonzo comes back. What are the chances you think Coby remains in a Bulls uniform starting next season? Maybe not, getting moved by the trade deadline, but by the offseason. What do you see from Coby?
Yeah, I think also that's a 50-50. He's one, even though they, sort of need him because he can shoot. They don't really have much shooting, especially off the bench. Because starters, Zach's a good shooter, Vuč, pretty good. I mean, for depth, length shooter. Uh, yeah, but you're right. Issue of, do you want to pay him? His offer, to get to unrestricted is 10 million. His qualifying offers 10 million for next season.
Right.
And then they obviously really like Dosunmu, local guy, and all that. And second, they feel good about the pick. I happen to like Coby better. I think he's more productive, and I actually think he's been very consistent. I think if you look at his numbers over the last 2 or 3 weeks, for sure, it's basically been about the same every game. Played limited minutes. He's got more of a defined role now. He's not some games coming in, you got to be the point guard, and some games you're not playing as much. He's playing pretty consistently, coming in, shooting, and you're right. He's handled the ball better. He attacks the basket, which he never did. He makes some defensive plays like he did against the Spurs. Really keyed that fourth quarter run that, kind of won the game for them when they started out, made 2 steals right away to start the quarter. So, yeah, I think he's been better, but somebody is going to, and especially like you say, Lonzo's coming back, which they are counting on and hoping for. Somebody's going to lose minutes, and I think he would be the one. So, I could see them including him in a deal or making a move, that kind of thing. Now that he's probably enhanced his value somewhat, and there's a question of whether they want to pay him long term.
Right. So, Sam, I'll get you out of here on this one then. Like I said, we're going to get a report on the game. A little less than 30 games left on the season for the Bulls. Obviously, we could see some changes to the roster in the next few hours or so. But where do you see this team finishing at the end of the year? And do you think there's any chance they could somehow make some noise in the playoffs?
Yeah, I do. Because I don't think the East is loaded. Some teams are good. Boston, Milwaukee. There are a couple of good teams. I think Brooklyn, is at a potential crisis point. They're a team that, who knows which way they're going to go now after the deal. Are they going to do something else? Whatever. So, and then the rest of the conference is sort of mixed in there, Knicks and a couple other teams. And, even though the Bulls, was sort of had fallen, well under 500, they've gotten up near there now. They're only a game or two, on the loss column out of 5th or 6th. So, I think they have a chance to, to get into that spot, even avoid the play-in. Really, I mean, all you got to do is put together a streak. Now they have a tougher close to the season. This is sort of their soft spot right now. So to get in wins, they should. They have a chance to go. Same thing happened last year, coming out of the break.
But the good thing is a tougher close for the Bulls so far this season has proved to actually be a more competitive Bulls team when they're going against these tougher.
Well, there's that. That's a good point. But a lot of it's on the road also to close. I know they make a late West Coast trip, which you don't usually do. But who knows? It's hard to, again, like I say, with this parity in the NBA, it's hard to pick. But yeah, I think, and the other thing too, the bar's not that high. Making a run in the playoffs to them is going to the second round. It's winning one round.
Right.
And so
that's better than last year. Yeah, true.
Right, and that's the point. If they can win one round, they'll look at it like it's a successful season. And now we get Lonzo back, and we have a chance to go another round. If you go another round, you're in the conference finals, and if you're in the conference finals, you have a chance to win the title. Because once you're in the Final Four, guys get injured, stuff happens. So I'm not predicting any of those things, because you could find 18 teams who are in a similar spot and say, we can do the same thing. And, and somebody's going to be weeded out. But I think, as long as they have they have 3 high level quality players, and that still means something in the NBA.
Yeah. Sam, as always, I really appreciate you making the time out of your day to meet with me. Keep up the great work at Bulls.com and enjoy the rest of the season.
All right. Thanks. Good to talk to you.